dolci signor, come soavi riuscirono a te la notte andata di questa bocca i baci.
My name's Tim Albery. I'm directing the Coronation of Poppea by Monteverdi, one of the earliest operas ever written. It's July 2014, and we've been working on the piece for about a year, and when I say we, I mean the conductor, Lawrence Cummings, is one of the great experts on this kind of early music, and the designer, Hannah Clark, and myself. I've been working towards what the visual feel of the piece is going to be and what the shape of the opera is going to be, because it's an opera that we can choose to cut and shape to suit our own needs. The story of the opera is based on the historical truth that there was an emperor called Nero, who was a pretty violent character, as were all his relatives, who is married to a woman called Octavia, has fallen out of love with her, wants to marry his new partner, Poppea. And in order to achieve that, he ends up disposing of various obstacles in the way of his advisor, Seneca, who he forces to kill himself, and his wife, Octavia, who he banishes, and another couple that he also banishes for reasons that are slightly more complicated. But essentially it's a story of power and Machiavellian behavior by those in charge. The problem that people often talk about with this particular piece is the two main characters, Poppea and Nero, are not perhaps the nicest of people. She's very ambitious. She wants to become the empress at all costs. She's the one who pushes Nero to get rid of Seneca, for example. Nero himself will do anything to maintain power. And on top of that, his view is, I'm in charge. I have absolute power, so I'm not constrained in any way by traditional moral behavior. I have the right, if I want to kill someone, I can. So who's going to stop me? Nobody, so if I want to, I will. And yet, these two people have some of the most fantastic love music that you'll ever hear. The final duet, when she has finally become the empress, is the most beautiful love duet you will ever hear. And it's quite hard to reconcile this music that makes you think, oh, these two wonderful people and they're so happy and they're in love, but we know what they have done in order to get to this position of being married and being in power together. So that is a challenge. A lot of the other characters are very sympathetic and are put under a lot of pressure, and they're in love with each other but not allowed to be, or Seneca is trying to keep Nerone under control and ends up dying for it. So there's a lot of other characters that we can really sympathize and empathize with. The main characters, it's harder. I think we're thinking that maybe, at least I'm thinking, that Poppea, we might gradually see her realizing what her ambition is leading her to. That she begins to see what Nero is really like. Underneath the glow of the beginnings of their great love affair, she suddenly begins to see that there's a pretty dangerous creature underneath it. And I want to try to run with that a bit, so that by the end, although she's singing this great love duet, you sort of know she's also thinking, well, he's just killed this many people. What's there to stop him eventually killing me? So hopefully we can make something where it makes her much more human underneath her ambition and her desire to be famous, that there is someone who's beginning to be very troubled by what's happened to her. So I suppose the piece speaks to the pleasure we take in watching monsters behave badly, particularly in the world of politics and power. I suppose the most obvious parallel you can think of at the moment is The House of Cards, the American Kevin Spacey playing the man who starts out as the head of Congress, ends up as vice president, finally ends up as president, and along the way has disposed of all sorts of problems, often by killing people. And yet he has this sophisticated urbane surface. And also he has this very strange relationship with his wife, which is a kind of intense love affair between two brutal power seekers. So in fact it's a very good parallel for this piece where you're fascinated by these people. You don't necessarily like them, but you want to spend time with them because they're so strange and because they're so ambitious, and yet somehow they engage you emotionally. So I don't think anything's changed about our interest in stories where powerful people do terrible things, but somehow we want to watch them. In pursuit of wanting to be aware of how nothing has really changed since the times of the Roman Empire, we decided very early on that we probably wouldn't set it in togas and men in skirts and all the things that come along with the world of Gladiator and all that other world that we know about, which is much easier to do in the films than it is to do on stage. And we decided to make it feel very Italian. And we've been very taken by those early films of filmmakers like Antonioni and Pasolini from the early 1960s, where they have this incredibly beautiful, sort of cruel, hot weather, Italian feeling, those sort of muted pastel colours that are very much of that period, when women were still women and wore dresses and people were incredibly chic and stylish. And so somehow it speaks to that world of the wealthy contained in their little bubble, because although we're dealing with very powerful people here, we never see the people. We never see them in contrast to those whom they rule over. We're sort of locked in this little world of powerful people scheming against each other to achieve what they want. So we have chosen to put it into our version of that sort of mid-20th century Italian chic, smooth, rather enticing colour world.